Let me bring in Professor Ackah, who is with a senior research fellow at ISSER. Every year you come out with data, statistical data on our socio-economic fabric, looking at everything that is happening, from the tax handles, like I mentioned. And I'm throwing the same questions to all of you. If you look at the data we have now, Ghana's Eurobonds, for example, have been among the worst performers in emerging markets globally. And when you look at Bloomberg's report, the plans for the local debt recast in September, handing investors losses of almost 12%, part of which Dr. Etiahene alluded to. These are very trying times. What do you feel would be the impact of this if a debt restructuring is done wholesale, like we're seeing it now? What would it mean for the business community, for ordinary Ghanaians in 2023?
Thank you very much, and good morning to the other panelists and your cherished listeners. I think Dr. Etiahene and other people who have spoken rightly raised the challenges that we are facing. We acknowledge that these are difficult times. To be sincere with you, we are in a difficult time. But I think when we have crises like that, it gives us an opportunity to rethink and to do things differently. So I don't want us to be unnecessarily alarmed because we have come this way before, and the history behind us can also show us that other countries have also gone through this period. But it depends on what you do, and the kind of policies we have will either aggravate the crisis or will actually give us opportunity to recover quickly and go on to the time of prosperity. Now, given the problems we have, we need to identify and properly diagnose what is the problem. And I hear people saying that government has overborrowed and our debt overhang is too much. I beg to differ. I think I disagree. Because if you look at the debt to GDP, we are talking about 75% or so. We've gone beyond that. Other countries are in 200%, 100%, and they are not troubled at all.
Yes, but they'll quickly tell you that the dynamics, the economic, fiscal dynamics of those countries are very different from ours. Ours are very susceptible to certain shocks, and that's why we are where we are.
Yeah, so that's why we need to look at, so where is the problem? The problem is not the debt. The problem is how to fix the economic dynamics so that we can pay the debt. Basically, that's what it means. The problem is first the composition of the debt. The debt is external and then the domestic. The external debt, traditionally, we used to borrow whenever it was necessary. And then we borrowed from bilateral, multilateral. For some reason, over the last few years, since 2008, especially when President Kufuor went to the international bond market or the capital market, we have seemed to develop some appetite for going to the international market to borrow. That kind of market is speculative. It's what we call in economics hot money. It's like a man that leaves your wife and go to the street for prostitute. Okay, so these are people who are looking for highest return within the shortest possible time, and they are not interested in giving you money to develop your country. Okay, so that is one of the things we need to decide as we are going through this crisis. Should we come out and go back again to that market? I expect us to have policies that limit the Ministry of Finance and on going to that market unless it's necessary and unless they are borrowing for economic projects that will repay itself. That is dangerous. That's what sent Sri Lanka onto their knees. That's what sent the East Asian countries in the 1990s on their knees, because there will be quick capital reversal. If not that, our debt to GDP is not a problem, but it's because these people now began to withdraw their currencies. We now lost our reserves and we don't have the capacity to repay. So that is one of the issues which we need to address. How do we raise enough export revenue? Export is what we need to be able to pay our foreign debt. So how do we invest in our in our industries, in our agriculture sector, to be able to reduce our import bill and save some dollars and export the things we produce here and get more revenue so that we can pay our debt. Now look at how much we gain in export in this last 1 year, between January and September. We made exports on our trade account surplus about $1.7 billion. What the IMF is going to give us in total is $3 billion over 3 years or so. Next year, we expect that IMF will allocate about $1.4 billion to us, according to the Ministry of Finance. Now, we could get that from export if we decided even not to go to IMF and we wanted to ramp up our exports. In 1 year, we could have a surplus on our trade worth about $3 billion, and then that can finance, raise our reserves and finance our debt. But since we decided to go to IMF, what do we need to do? This budget needs to have policies that invest in the industrial sector, agro industries, to be able to make sure that the things we are importing, we reduce it and able to export more so that we can have more surplus on the trade account to finance this debt that will be due soon. Now, the other one has to do with the domestic debt. And the domestic debt shouldn't have been a problem if the interest rate was not going up. When the government was borrowing the domestic debt, most of it at the time, the interest rate was around 12.5%, thereabout, the policy rate. Now that it has been hiked to about 27%, it has increased the bill of the government. And that's also another area that we need to look at. How do we have a discussion with the central bank so that the continuous increasing of the interest rate that is making the government bonds, domestic bonds, also expensive, and its services becoming expensive, and that's why this haircut is coming in. That's also a discussion we need to have, how our policy rate will not make domestic borrowing more expensive. But be that is made, I don't think that we need even this haircut at all. I think it's an injustice to perpetrate on the banking sector.
You say we don't need a haircut at all. It's an injustice to perpetrate on the banking sector. But other economists will also tell you we don't really have an option. Our hands are tied. I have had interactions with economists in the past who have said that, like it or not, we'll have to go down this path. Is it a path we can avoid?
Well, I think we can avoid it. And this is my proposal. All over the world, throughout history, the central bank of the nation is a lender of last resort. Whenever there are crises, we don't need to wait till the economy totally contracts and for banks to collapse before the central bank comes in with a bailout.
Right.
The central bank should have enough resources or capacity to create money to save an economy that is going the way of Sri Lanka. We don't want to see political crisis, or we don't want to see this economy on fire or totally destroyed. Then we now want to do something about it. I want you to go through history in other countries. Even when US was fighting war or Britain was fighting war, the central bank is the one that came in with money to buy ammunition and to be able to fight the war. First World War, Second World War, whether it's the Japanese or it's the Europeans or any wars that were fought in history, it was the central bank was called upon to be the lender of last resort. So in this case, for example, if you look at the central bank and their balance sheet, they already have helped a lot. They are actually holding almost about 20% of the government debt. But I'm saying that they can do more. So what I think we can do, for example, if you talk what Dr. Atuyahene is saying, for example, that if the banking sector is going to lose about 33 billion if there's a 10% haircut, what I would suggest is that there should not be haircut, there should actually be a debt swap. The central bank must come in to bail out the banks and to swap this debt and pay to the banking sector and assume this debt on their balance sheet. And in that case, there's no haircut. The government will now be owing the central bank more than probably they used to owe, and they will not be owing any commercial bank. And the central bank now can decide to have a reschedule and give the government 20 years to repay, or decide that it will write it off its books
Okay.
That is a way to save the situation in my humble view.
Okay. So no haircut.